Thanks for being here, and thank you to Paul for hopping on this call too and offering to share your knowledge. I'm Porter. I'm the Farmer Services Coordinator at Georgia Organics. I work with Kayla Williams, who is also on the call, as well as Michael Wall and Lauren Cox, who is also on this call, to make up the Farmer Services and Farm to Restaurant team at Georgia Organics. So we do a few things for those of you who aren't familiar. We offer education and networking opportunities such as this, resources, organic certification coaching. We do disaster relief and COVID relief grants. And we operate the Georgia Organics Farmer Accelerator Program, of which Hearts of Harvest is a part, which is an investment and consulting program for Georgia farms. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Paul to introduce himself, and we can get rocking and rolling.
Thanks, Porter. Yeah, my name is Paul Sorah. My wife and I moved to Arnoldsville, Georgia, just outside of Athens, a little over 3 years ago, and decided to start a farm. We started on about 2.5 acres and have since expanded up to around 10 to 12 acres of cultivated production. We grow mixed vegetables, seasonal fruits, cut flowers, mushrooms, and microgreens. We sell at the Marietta Square Farmers Market, the Athens Farmers Market, and we're also a member of the Collective Harvest Growers Co-op here in Athens. We're kind of just doing this full time. We support our family with it and multiple other employees' families, and we hope that we can just share some knowledge that might help somebody today.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. I am going to stop sharing my screen for a moment, and we are gonna organize some breakout rooms really quickly so y'all again have the chance to network. Porter, as I'm setting up these breakout rooms, would you mind reading aloud or putting in the chat box the couple of questions that we want folks to discuss in the breakout rooms?
Oh yeah, I can do both. So for y'all auditory learners, the questions are, if you do have employees, what is your greatest challenge with employee management currently? If you don't have employees, what do you envision as a challenge, or what is your hesitation? And if you had more time, how do you envision you could grow your business? So just reflect on, you can answer one or all of those, and I'll go ahead and copy paste them into the chat as well. So folks like me who forget things quickly after hearing them can read them.
All right, y'all. So I have created some breakout rooms for everybody, and I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording and open these breakout rooms. So as Porter mentioned, the questions are going to be in the chat, and you'll have an opportunity to connect with some other folks on this call. So enjoy, and Zoom takes a couple of seconds to get you into the breakout room. We'll be in the breakout rooms for about 7 minutes, and then you'll automatically be taken back into this full group room. So bear with me, breakout rooms can be a little wonky sometimes, but just hang tight and you'll get to where you're going in just a couple of moments.
I'm happy to represent for group 4, which was me and Catherine and Rodney. Mary Elizabeth also sat in, but she's doing some foster dog stuff. So we talked about what clear expectations look like for employees so that employers and employees are on the same page, and also what it looks like to help your employees specialize and get professional development and one-on-one, attention in the farm setting.
Anyone that was in my group, feel free to pipe in. this year.
Ellen was just talking before she got interrupted. Maybe she could just finish that thought. That seems like a good nugget of wisdom.
We were talking, is that working? Yeah, we were talking about having folks work on the farm that don't know how to do anything. Have never been outside. They don't know what a shovel is barely. And how complicated it is to really explain even what seems like the simplest thing, like planting a broccoli plant. And I was just mentioning that to mirror what Porter did for us in just a few moments ago, is that she gave us the instructions with her mouth in spoken language, and then she wrote it down. And to consider using more than one style of communication back to back, so that you have cast a wider net to catch the different kinds of learners. And then of course you're going to show it to them with your body. So now you've got three ways that they can hopefully plug in. And then I would just add on to it, always giving little bits at a time, the context about why are we doing this? Where are we going with this? What's the point? And why am I being such a pain in the ass about this, this, and this? Sort of a thing that helps, I think, get it stuck in.
Hey, Melissa, do you want to talk about our group?
Sure. We talked about delegation and a little bit about recruitment, and I brought up a point about trying to find one magical person who meets all of your needs versus several people, and maybe doing it more piecemeal based on their skills and abilities and interests and things like that.
Does anybody from the last group want to share, or we want to go ahead and kick it over to Paul to start the presentation? What do we think? All right, Paul, we're going to let you go ahead and start the presentation. And I think Porter is going to share the screen for you. Yeah, we'll go ahead and get it started.
Awesome. Awesome. I really appreciate everybody tuning in today. I know we're all busy from varying degrees of preparing for the season at hand, and I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate you sharing a few moments with us. I'm sure lots of you guys are already successful and doing well, and we are doing well too, but with always room to grow. And hopefully I can share some info on how we handle our employees and our crew on a day-to-day basis to make a pretty awesome work environment, and to have a really nice retention rate as well. I think one of the most important pieces, and we were kind of hitting on this earlier, is that workflow management piece. When you're running a farm, sometimes it's hard enough to just find good work as it is. So it's hard to turn away people who are willing to work hard just because they don't necessarily know what to do. So, that being clear and establishing a healthy workflow management, I think, is one of the key pieces of the puzzle. And really that day-to-day workflow management is where it all starts for us. We have in our wash station is basically where our crew assembles every morning. And our farm managers, we have 2 farm managers, and they come in about 30 minutes before everyone else gets to work. And they set the whiteboard for the day. And our whiteboard has all the tasks for the day on it, whether that's a harvest list, a seeding list, a planting list, a project like sanitizing, organizing. Everything that we want to get done for the day is presented on the whiteboard when our crew shows up in the morning. And this really helps eliminate that 30 minutes of wasted time of, well, what are we going to do, or who's going to do what? And a lot of times our farm managers will go ahead and delegate a task and go ahead and put someone's name behind a product they're going to harvest, or beside a task that needs to be done for the day. And this really just sets the crew up so that they can show up and be ready to get to work and know what their objectives are. Every day when a staff member shows up, they log their time on the punch card. They do the same thing when they leave. This keeps it super simple on our end as the owners for dealing with payroll and hours. Another simple thing is just there's things that seem simple, but like we all know, you have to implement the simplest of strategies for these folks, because your veteran crew people, they know what to do and they're on it. But when you bring somebody new in, little things like, hey, don't forget to check off the chart once it's been harvested for the order, because then someone else is going to run back out and think that it hasn't been harvested. And now, you're dealing with those kind of little things. It seems so simplistic, but in good management, being able to handle the simplest pieces is what makes the workflow and the management of the crew more efficient. And then we also have another board that we keep open for notes, feedback, and needs for the farm, where if we're running low on clamshells, or we're running low on pints, or we're running low on bags, or hey, the hoe handle broke off this hoe, we need a new hoe. So they've got the ability, if we're not around or we're not there at the end of the day, to communicate the needs that they're seeing in the farm. And then the owners always are keeping an eye on that to make sure that they feel like whether it's something they personally need or what the farm needs, they know that we're hearing them and they know that we're responding to that feedback and giving them what we need, and also keeping us from running out of stuff. Because when you're not as involved into every little piece of the day to day, it's hard to know that, oh, we're down to 50 clamshells and we need like 300 by the weekend. So it's nice to have that piece involved there. Other workflow tips for us is organization. It's super critical. And this is the time of the year that we really like to focus on organizational projects, because as you all know, once we get to April, there is really not time for a lot of projects to go on. We're going full tilt with everything, and going ahead and setting the tone and setting the systems in place for organization is what really makes that workflow functional. We have a system in place for pretty much everything on our farm, from where each tool goes at the end of the day to where totes and bags are stored, or how the cooler is supposed to be organized. And each of those systems, referring back to what Ellen was saying earlier, those systems are verbally communicated. Those systems are then typed out and laminated and placed in a vicinity of where that system takes place. And then sometimes there's even pictures printed off of what that area needs to look like. So that way we're casting that wide net of, here's a vocal, here's a written, and here's a visual of how this needs to look. So there's really no excuses at that point for a system not to be efficient. And that's all part of that closed loop thing. The system is not complete. If you take the bed rake out and you're prepping a bed and working in fertility, well, that system's not complete until that rake is back and it's designated spot in our tool storage. And it's that way for everything. It's, you open the system, then you close the system. And I think that really clears up a lot of things, and it keeps everything in place and in order, which is crucial to an efficient workflow. It's kind of our first things. Anybody have anything they want to ask? Or
yeah, I have a question. I have a quick question, Paul.
Okay.
You talked about your systems, having laminated pictures and things, but how does each employee, how do you verbalize each system to each employee? I mean, is there like a one day at the beginning of the year where you go walk through everything, or do you, if a new employee comes on in June, do you just spend a whole, half of a morning walking through with that employee, or how do you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's kind of, that one's kind of fluid too, because we really try to empower our farm managers. Like we want them to take ownership of all day to day. We want them to feel like they've got a piece of ownership and everything going on. So it may be something to where our farm managers, they know everything that we want to do. They know exactly how we want it done, to where I could literally not be here for a week and I would know that everything was pretty much in place. So if it's not too busy of a day, then I will give that task to the farm manager, because it's one of the farm managers, because that's going to further enhance their ability to know that system and teach that system. And it also sets up that hierarchy of like, no, look, like this is the person, like, yeah, we're the owners and we're here and we do things, but like what this person says carries weight as well. But if it's a really busy morning and the manager are already on something, then I'll definitely take that time, that one-on-one time, and use that also as kind of a way to build a little bit of the relationship and get to know something about them while we're being productive within the farm system.
I have a question. When you have like a lean crew, which, it sounds like you have yourselves, the owners, then there's the farm managers, and then there's like crew. When you have a lean crew and it's you as the owner and the manager, and then just like one other person, that would mean you do that stuff, basically. You are the
Yes.
and
that's what we did for 2 years. It was, we never had more than one employee the first 2 years of our farm. And then that's what it was. We seeded, we weeded, we transplanted, we delivered, we built the systems, and the one person we had, we just tried to train them to do everything that we could do. So yeah, that's the trade-off of that we'll get into for sure within this, of the give and takes of lean crew versus kind of a stack crew.
Cool.
If there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and keep rolling. Yeah, so next we're going to get into cultivating successful employees. We found that our most successful employees on our farm typically share common personality traits, but they have varied in terms of previous experience and background. So more than like just someone who's farmed before or has been around before, we're kind of looking for intangibles. We're kind of looking for the main thing, a positive attitude, somebody that's happy to be here. As we all know, a sour apple or a bad attitude on a farm can really just drain the entire system and the entire day. It's really taxing in a profession that's hard enough as it is. It's important to have people with good energy and good vibe, and that want to be there. There's nothing worse than paying somebody that doesn't really want to be there, or isn't putting in the energy. They're just taking from a situation. So that kind of gets all back to the vetting process and to the hiring process. And so qualities that we're looking for in employees: personality. They want to be excited to work on the farm, show interest in hard tasks, have energy and a positive attitude. Availability. If they have a complex schedule or limited availability, we may pass on them, but we also don't look at that always as a negative, because sometimes we may have a role on the farm that doesn't need to be somebody who's 8 to 5. Maybe somebody has 3 hours a day in the morning, 3 days a week. And we're like, cool, perfect. You can come in and prune greenhouse tomatoes for 3 hours before it gets too hot. So I think it's important to be flexible. You know, if you just want a crew that's 5 deep working 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, however you want to do it, that's fine. But we found some advantages of being able to save some money by having like 4 full-time people and then like 2 part-time people. And instead of having 6 fulls, that saves us quite a bit of money to be able to use people who need schedule flexibility to come in and knock out 3 days a week. And really they get enough done that we need to get done that keeps us from overpaying for labor. And then communication is a huge piece for me in my personal life and for my business. And that's, we probably over communicate just because I don't want to leave stones unturned. If there's a problem, if there's a beef, if there's somebody who's not cool with something or they're burning out, it's like I'm always trying to communicate and like, hey, what do you need? Like what can we give you guys to make this job better? What can we offer you to make this experience better? How can we enhance this grinding gig for you? And then, you know, we'll also ask them to deal with some social media stuff at times. And then most of our communications as far as the hiring process goes has come from Instagram, which is kind of crazy. It's Instagram and referrals. And it's kind of crazy how powerful social media is, where we've really never had to like go searching. Either we get an employee that comes from a referral or they just hit us up on Instagram. And so that's pretty great way to go about it. And then the expectations part of just being honest about what the gig is. You know, if you have somebody with experience, they know the gig and they know what they're getting into, but there's some folks that come from the world of YouTube and Southern Home and Garden magazines and beautiful Instagram photos, and they don't know what they're getting into. So we like to just be real about folks, and in that hiring process with everyone we bring on, we typically do like a 30-day like no hard feelings trial period. To where we'll bring somebody on and maybe at not like the top rate that they'll be at, but we'll bring them on and be like, look, let's give it a month. Like, let's see in 30 days if this is what you thought it would be, if this is what you want it to be. And if it's not, no hard feelings. Like, I'll give you a reference if you need one for another job. But then after that 30 days, we discuss a different pay grade based on where they may be and how many hours they can work. And then we kind of know, I mean, in this business in 30 days, you know pretty quickly if you're going to like it or not. Sometimes it doesn't even take that long. So when it comes to, well, one thing though, my wife got it kind of when we were putting this together, we got a kick out of this. We were talking about this trial period. We've never actually let anyone go after that 30 days, but we have had about 4 or 5 people weeded out by like the 2-week mark. So it kind of serves its purpose pretty well in that way of, you know, in 2 weeks, you'll figure out that you don't want to be here. And if you're still here after 30 days, then we'll go with you. We'll give it a shot as long as you check the boxes. Our employee management, as far as retention goes, retention requires intention, and you don't luck into keeping staff satisfied and employed without taking purposeful action throughout the season. We like to empower our employees. We like to make them feel heard. We don't want to look at this as a dictatorship in any way. We set up our farm, we set up our systems, we set up the way that we want to run things. But at the same time, if you're out there grinding and you've got a better way or a better idea, or you're seeing something going on with the crop that I may not be seeing, like, tell me, give me feedback. I want to hear you. If there's we just had our beginning of the year staff meeting, about an hour and a half of me just listening to the staff give me feedback on our systems, on what they think that we could do to be better. How can we enhance our production, you know? And it really meant a lot to them for me to take that time to just sit there and say, hey, this isn't about me. Like you give me what you think you need or what you think the farm needs. And, you know, and then beyond that, the very next day I was taking action steps to put some of that into play so that they could see that, listen, I'm listening to you. I'm hearing what you're saying. And I think these are great ideas. I'm sometimes caught up in the management and growing the business side of things where I miss stuff. And, you know, it's like, hey, that's a great idea. I hear you. Here's me going out of my way to implement this now because I respect your thoughts. So that's a super important piece. Porter, we'll go to some of the training stuff now. So this kind of picks up on what Lauren was asking, and also what I think Chris was asking. We typically like to have our staff train our new hires. We will take the time to work alongside them those first, you know, at times the first week or two. But really, we like to take a new hire and pair them with a farm manager and have them work through a variety of tasks together so that, yeah, they're training and they're teaching them, but we try to do that through the system. You know, if we've got an order for the day, well, we want our farm manager to take the new person along with them and harvest multiple different things so that we're training and we're teaching, but we're also getting the work done that needs to be done. And we're keeping the efficiency rolling. And it gives them an idea of a real-time expected pace and what is actually going on, as opposed to me just going out there and being like, well, this is how we pick kale and this is how we do this and that. It's like, well, we don't just pick kale. We need 100 bunches and this is how fast that needs to happen. So it's good for us, for that training piece, for them to see it in action, not like in action of the flow, not just this is how you do it, because they need to know the speed. You know, we've had people come in and they're just kind of whistling and, you know, staring at the birds, and it's like, no, man, like we got to go, like this with this bed's got to get done and this has to be done in 8 hours. So that's been a pretty effective training strategy for us, and it kind of helps build that bond really quickly in that working together environment. One of the more difficult things in management of any kind is that micromanagement piece. And because so many of us have probably started our farm from the ground up, so many of us are very attached. You know, this is our baby, the soil, the plants. Like this is, we've put our life's work and our life's finances and everything we have into this. Not micromanaging is hard. You know, delegation in the breakout group earlier, that was my biggest struggle, was delegation, because when you've done everything yourself for so long, it's hard to let go of things. It's hard to let go of tasks. So learning not to micromanage of, you know, yeah, we want this done at a double row, 12-inch in row spacing on a 30-inch top, but I don't have time to come behind you and measure these plants and make sure they're 12 inches apart. You know, here's a tape measure, or here's a ruler, like whatever, just figure it out, you know? So, well, we try not to get into the micromanaging piece of it. Now, when we inspect the farm and inspect the systems, if things are way off, like, okay, like we'll address that. But it's kind of that 80-20 principle of like, if you guys can get this right 80% of the way, we're going to be all right, instead of like trying to micromanage that extra 20% out of it, because ultimately it's just that's just kind of how I think about management. It's not the only way, and it doesn't mean that I'm right, but that's just a way that we've found to work well. And then like within that, it's a good way for you to really test your ability to teach. And then the people who are leading your farm or new employees, it's a good way to test their knowledge and like, am I teaching this right? Are you getting what I'm saying to where you can now teach other people? Or am I not giving you the information in the right way that you need it to where you can teach and train these people? Or do we need to talk? How is the best way for you to learn so that I can learn how to give you that information? So those are all really important pieces as far as training new hires, and that's the hiring process in general, I guess you could say. So if anybody's got any feedback or questions or want to pick my brain on that, I'm willing to hear it.
Yeah, Paul, can you just explain a little bit more? I just wanted to pull out this 80-20 rule that you mentioned and just kind of highlight it. Can you give some examples of how that would play out in your farm and kind of what the reasoning is behind that?
Well, the 80-20 concept's a pretty popular management thought of if you can get 80% of the return for 80% of the work, or like what, if I can get what I need out of the 80% efficiency rate, then why would I spend the extra time of micromanaging or breaking things down for that extra 20, I guess. I'm not a speaker on the 80-20 rule, but that's definitely, there's a lot of really good documentaries or master classes out there on it. And I would encourage anybody managing a business to look at that. It's fantastic. And then like an example of that would be like, if the crew is transplanting 10 beds, like we just finished transplanting like 20,000 onions. That's a lot of work and it's hard work. And I told the crew like, hey, this is the spacing I need. This is what it should fill up. And this is, what needs to happen. Well, am I going to go stand over them and like pick them apart if one onion is 6 inches apart instead of 4 inches apart, or 2 inches apart instead of 4 inches apart? Like, as long as overall, like as long as we're hitting that 80% of this is really good, then I'm cool with it. Like there's no need to come in and micromanage, because the amount of time it's going to waste, and then the energy that puts on your crew, where it's like, dude, like we're out here working our tail off and you're trying to bust my chops over a lettuce head being 8 inches apart instead of 6 inches apart. And I think it's a balance, because you need things done well and the way you want it, but it's just that line of like where do you draw that line of like, because if you're going to micromanage this thing to expect this all to be done to 100% of your expectation, you're going to be out of business and not have employees probably. Does that answer your question a little bit, Porter?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for explaining that a little bit more. Anybody else?
Yeah, I've got a question, Paul. Do you have a pretty good grasp on metric or like timed, how long each task takes on the farm? Like, for example, that transplanted bed, do you tell your crew that that transplanting one bed takes 45 minutes and that's how long it should take, kind of thing?
Yeah, and fortunately, again, like we trained our farm managers to those expectations too. And like when I put a task list together for the day, I'm putting that list together with those kind of like, all right, we should be able to knock out 15 beds, 15 transplanted beds today of these type of crops or whatever. Like if we hit 13, it's not the end of the world, like whatever. But like if it's 10, like what the hell are you guys doing? Like we need to hit the mark. So just because everything was so hands-on for us from the beginning, I kind of numbers are my thing. They make a lot of sense, and they just kind of are very easy for me to grasp. So like I have a lot of those timings and a lot of those numbers in my head from the early days of doing this. And And then those expectations are kind of put in place. And that's part of that training process too of, all right, if we're doing a 3x12 bed of kale, like this is really what that should take with 2 people. And kind of the timeline too of like composting a bed, fertilizing the bed, bed prep raking, and then transplanting, you know, like, all right, this is how long that should take for this bed. So yeah, those numbers are there, and then the expectations are set at the beginning of the day. And then as long as those numbers are hit, then I don't really ask questions at that point.
Hey, Paul, when you're putting your task list together, do you divide it by priority level?
Sometimes we'll do it by priority level, or sometimes we'll do the divide and conquer of like, all right, so this is the harvest list for the day. 2 people can knock that out. All right. This greenhouse needs to be cleared. 2 people knock that out. And these 6 beds need to be planted. 2 people go knock that out. So it's kind of like, but because the thing is sometimes all 3 of those things need to happen in the same day. And what I've found is like, if I put everybody on one thing, then sometimes I don't quite get everything done that I need to get done for the day. So it's easier to go ahead and say, these are the 3 main objectives today, and I need you to get these done today. So then that expectation set of like, oh, well, it's just me and you, and we've got to get this done today. So there's really no screwing around at that point. But if it's like a massive harvest day and peak season, and we're sending out a $3,000 order the next morning, then it's pretty much anything else is taking the back burner at that point.
For sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Paul, what I'm kind of hearing is that there is, and like just to reiterate what Ellen and Porter showed or talked about too, is the need to write things down so that there is a timeline or like a chronology. And so the subtext is that this isn't just the only thing that needs to get done. These things are going to get done today. Because I found that when I've gone out to some farms, the workers will show up and the manager will say, hey, like, go get started on that. And then wait to tell them what to do next after they finish that. And that doesn't give them, the employees, any context of what needs to be done for the whole day. So
yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, because like that's what makes that board so important. Is it seems silly, just like a little simple whiteboard, but it's like, it's the compass of the day, you know. It's like, look, like these are all the things that have to get done today. Like, so, and I expect them to be done. And because we've built that relationship of I respect you, you respect me, they're not going to BS on the clock. You know, I know you can get this stuff done in a day because I've done it. Like, so this is the expectation, and plan and allot your time accordingly, you know?
Yeah, I'd throw in with you, Paul, that idea of giving them the information so they know how to pace themselves in a certain way, you know, especially when the weather is unfriendly. If somebody doesn't know how much they have to push on the gas at what times of day, under what temperatures, they're going to be cautious, right? And like, then it's an endurance sport, and you have to let them know, is this an endurance day? We're just going to go slow and steady and get to the end, or are we sprinting until 11 and then we'll take our foot off the gas? Like, they need some of that context, just like you say. I love that.
Yeah, and these are little things, but they're so important, you know. Like I think that those of us that are farmers or have managed or ran farms, it's things we take for granted because we're so in tune. When it's going to be 95 degrees at 3 o'clock, well, we need to get here at 7, and we need to go real hard until 11 because it's going to get hot, and we're going to have to pace, and we're going to have to take breaks, and we're going to have to be consuming salt and water and everything else to get through this. So it is important to train that mindset of like, look, guys, you've got about 5 hours of optimal weather, and then it's going to get hard. So let's go hard early, and then let's just go into the marathon pace to finish this out. I think Aubrey, the hand is raised there. I don't know.
Hey, Paul, this is Aubrey, and I just had a quick question. We are creating standard operating procedures for the farm, and I was wondering if you do that as well, or, you know, and if you do you give those to each employee, or are they just handed to the farm managers, and then the manager relays that information, you know, in whatever way, verbally or to your employees?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a responsibility that I take on myself as an owner. I feel that that falls in the owner bubble, because like something on that scale, for me anyways, I want to be responsible for that, because if something goes wrong, I don't want that to fall on anybody else. That's on me. Like, we've got to have those operating procedures dialed in, and then that will be shared and communicated and make sure that our farm managers know, and then that'll also be given to any new employee, and we'll kind of go over a lot of those things in the interviewing, onboarding, hiring process, and then it's up to the farm managers to then hold them accountable to those procedures, because now they've been made aware and that information has been given.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
You want to go to the retention piece there, Porter? So this is to me, this is the really big one that's changed our life, is the focus on retention. And a lot of our management strategies aren't just coming from a farming background, because my wife and I have both owned and ran businesses before we got into farming, and have been, and these are things that we've picked up along the way in other places, and then just have tried to like make it applicable to farming. And retaining value, or retaining employees to us, is all about gratitude, and ways to foster a great work environment and encourage retention. Low or no cost morale boosters. These are things that seem simple. They don't cost you a lot of money, but they really go a long ways. It's as simple as saying thank you as often and sincerely as possible for the simplest task. We just like to look our employees in our eye every day at some point and thank them for something individually that they're doing to make our life work, because this farm is the livelihood of my family. This is what puts the roof over our head and takes care of our children, and we do appreciate them, and that's super important that they feel that gratitude and that appreciation. We throw potlucks throughout the year to where they can, you know, bring their partner or a friend or whatever, and we just kind of just have a nice gathering to where we can get together and have some cocktails and enjoy each other's company outside of just the farming world. When we're in the middle of pretty hard task, we like to either bring in like a big pot of, or a big jug of nice coffee from one of the Athens coffee places, Thousand Faces, Jitter Joe's, or we'll go and get takeout lunch from somewhere. Like this week, or last week, when they were in the middle of just brutal onion planting and the ground's frozen and 15 mile an hour winds. At the end of the week, I just told everybody, I was like, hey, I'm getting lunch here. Put your order together. It's on me. And let's meet back here at 1 o'clock. And, you know, that was like $100 for me to get lunch for everybody. And yeah, $100 is $100, but still just that act of gratitude to let them know that we care. And I know that they're grinding, and I know that it's a difficult day. Those things go so far. We'll sometimes just have a little happy hour, or midday we'll build a fire and have some cocktails around lunch just to give everybody a laugh in a minute. And it's just these little things that they make me feel good to be with the crew and to share in these moments. And you can see how it affects them. you know, they finished the lunch and they were grinded. It had been like 3 days of onion planting, and then they were just like lit up and like, let's go finish this. Let's knock this out. And it's like, I spent $100, but I might have just bought myself $100 in productivity by doing that, because they went back invigorated and felt appreciated, you know. We always like to use social media to publicly praise and shout out our crew. And then all birthdays or celebrated life events, those little things, a birthday card and a $25 gift card to one of their favorite restaurants or something. It's ultimately, most of that stuff's a write-off for you. And you know, we're looking for write-offs, and we're looking for ways to keep our people happy and positive retention. So these are things that we found. And then with our farm managers and our full-time people, really anybody, our farm managers, more than anything, we always like to do bonuses when we can. When we've had a massive month and we can figure out, and we can look at our finances and see how it makes sense, we're always trying to give back and pay it forward with our crew. And those things go so far, whether it's a $50 bonus or $100 bonus or whatever it is, being able to, for them to know like, hey, this hard work you're doing just made us more money than we've ever made in a month. And I'm not going to go sit on a hill and count that money. Like, I appreciate it. We're going to take what we need for that growth, but we're also going to reinvest that back into our employees. Also with our full-time staff, we give them 3 paid days vacation a week, or not a week, a year, excuse me, because we can't really offer a lot of the benefits and perks of a normal 9-to-5-er, if you will. This is how we try to build that attractiveness into our positions that we're offering. You know, it's like, yeah, we're going to give you bonuses. We're going to buy you lunch. We're going to take care of you on your birthday. We're going to give you some paid days off, or, you know, there's those little things. And we're also really flexible around the holidays. Like this year when it was like Christmas Eve and Christmas on a Thursday, Friday, and then New Year's Eve and New Year's on a Thursday, Friday, I just told the crew, I was like, this is what we need to get done. If you guys can knock it out Monday, Tuesday of both of these weeks, you're good Wednesday through Sunday. Catch your breath and let's get back at it next, you know, after the first of the year. And then we also give them those options, because some people are like, actually, like, I'm not leaving town, or I'm not doing this and I'd rather work. I'm like, all right, cool, work, that's fine. So it's just that flexibility of giving people those options. So yeah, that's really our keys to retention. And we have, in March, we'll have had almost our entire crew in place for over a year, with all of them already committing to being on at least one more year. So in this game, retention is money. You know, every time you lose an employee, especially the good ones, I mean, that turnover cost of, this is what a broccoli plant looks like, and this is drip tape, and this is a landscape staple, and this is a lettuce head, and this is how you cut it. You know, every time you've got to turn over somebody and start that process over, that's money, money out of your pocket, and ultimately a loss of efficiency. And it overburdens owners, it overburdens management. And it's by doing those little things to encourage that retention. You know, like, we don't let our crew go in the winter. We keep them on and we eat it for a couple months. But the amount of money and time that saves us by not having to just start over every spring, you know, when everything's so full tilt and you're not trying to wait. Everything's hitting, you know, spring equinox is awakening, the plants are growing, and it's like every minute needs to be spent either harvesting or planting, it seems. So like, being able to just retain these people and keep them around and enter the season knowing how you do business and how things go is proven to be just invaluable to us this year. And I can open that up to anybody if you got questions on our retention strategies.
Paul, is there a specific point, maybe after the first year or something, or during the season, that you specialize tasks for folks, and have you found that responsibility specialization influences retention as well?
Yeah, for sure. So like, it kind of works both ways, and that's just kind of from a management perspective, something that I try to be aware of. Like last year, we had a gal that she loved cherry tomatoes. And so like I could tell that she really enjoyed the plants. She loved working with them, and she was like into it. And so I was like, you know what? You're going to manage the cherry tomato crop this year. Like I can tell you dig it. And she was like, really? I was like, yeah. She's like, that's amazing. And so every day she showed up, and she was pruning, she was stringing, she was managing the leaves, managing like the succession planting. She'd harvest for hours and hours. That she just loved it. But then I have some people that they get into something and then they're like, a month later, I'm kind of, good on that. And then we'll trade it out and swap somebody else in. But yeah, like it's kind of just a read on your end of finding folks that if that's something they're really into and you can feel that, then delegate that, give them ownership of like, hey, this is your baby now. Like you own this. But yeah, that's a good question.
Hey, Paul.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lauren.
Oh, I wanted to say I love hearing those low cost or no cost things, like feel good things for the staff, and like that we practiced that too when I was at Woodland Gardens. And then another thing that I really appreciated too as an employee was knowing that if there was any medical issue or just general physical maintenance that I needed, that I could take time off to get that taken care of. And it was never a question of value, like, is it serious enough to take off? With that being said, and you might get into it, I'd be curious to know, like, when that kind of stuff happens. Sometimes there are instances when it starts happening a lot, and then you're like, when do you have the come to the table? And you might cover that, or if you've ever had that experience, like, how do you?
Yeah, for sure. And that's something, if you've got to read on people, like, like people that work hard and they're putting it in. If somebody comes to me and they're like, my back, it's just out, like I need a day or I need 2 days. It's like, well, I'm not going to tell you your back's not out, because that's one of the main reasons I started hiring employees anyways, because my L5 is so jacked, I can't even hardly transplant. And so, yeah, I'm always super flexible with that. Or, I'm a big proponent of mental health and therapy. And it's like, if you've got a weekly therapy session or bi-monthly, like however it is, like, cool, absolutely do that. No skin off my back. If you need to take a half a day and take care of yourself, that's all good. Because if you're not showing up ready and healthy and feeling good mentally and physically, then you're going to be messing with the efficiency chain anyways. But like you said, you kind of got to be aware. It's like, if this is a thing that happens every like 2 weeks, well, either you have a serious injury and you need to get that checked out, and I'm supportive of that, or maybe we need to have a conversation about what's going on.
Yeah, Paul, I just wanted to bring up one thing that I think we talked about in one of our conversations was that during your reviews, you talk to folks kind of about what tasks they're interested in doing, what things they like and what things they don't like. And you and Lindsey try and set it up to where they're doing more of what they're interested in, what they like, and less of what they're not interested in and don't like. So that's kind of how you, from what I hear, that's kind of how you guide like the specialization within the staff and within like the promotion within the staff.
Absolutely. Yeah. It may get on their nerves sometimes, so we're just constantly checking in, and trying to get feedback. The quick check-ins may just be like a daily, like a daily with our farm managers, especially just like, hey, how's the day going? Like, what is there anything you need from me? What can I do? Is everybody hitting the mark? Is everything going well? So that's like a daily thing with our managers. And then we typically like to do like a quarterly sit down, like a formal quarterly sit down with our farm managers to kind of go through to poke holes in the system, really, of like what are you enjoying, what's going on, and then we try to also do that with all of our employees, because that kind of is back to that retention piece. Is if I can find something that you really dig doing and you're willing to come out here and give me 8 hours of that, and I can find a way for what you enjoy doing to make us profitable, then I'll invest in you having that task, if you will. I think that's like a lot of like really good management, kind of business planning for the year, of like, what are your goals for yourself in this business? What are your goals for this business as you see it? What task do you love? What task are you mum on? What task do you hate? And having that information really kind of helps keep everybody in a good flow state, because it's like, if I know employee 1, the last thing they want to do is be in a greenhouse with tomatoes, but I got somebody else who, like, the only reason they came to work at this farm was so that they could learn how to manage greenhouse tomatoes. Well, why would I try to make somebody do something that they don't like if they're also like, I love managing the salad mix. It's like my favorite thing is to cut salanova and put it all together and deal with that. It's like, well, okay, cool. Then you own that. And then you that love the tomatoes, here, you come in and help manage this tomato house. It doesn't always work out that way. I mean, there's always going to be some give and take on the farm of like, you're not just going to absolutely love everything you're doing all day long. But I think just being cognizant of that and creating that platform for people to tell you what they enjoy doing or not enjoy doing, and you showing that you're listening and try to give them opportunities to do more of what they enjoy versus just trying to force feed them a bunch of things they hate. I just think it goes a long ways back to that just being heard thing of like, cool, you're actually listening to me. You're not just putting a task list up and saying good luck. And like I was saying earlier, like when we do those sit downs and the reviews or whatever, it's important to me to put into action some things. It's like, not that I can put everything into action that they want to do, but just putting as much as I can out there, for them to show that they're being heard and that they have good ideas and that those things are important. Then I kind of hit on this earlier, but it's the kind of the real cost of turnover. Investing in your staff may seem like an expense, but really it's saving you money and making you more profitable in the long term. Time spent training new staff is always costly. But it's worth it if it allows your farm to keep running, expanding, and achieving new goals. But if you can begin each season at least with a core group of people in place, you're just so much, better off and so much better equipped to really attack the season. Because we know, like, attacking at the beginning of the season and getting a jump start and being on the go at the beginning of the season is crucial to the bottom line. It's kind of sets the tone financially and mentally for the whole year. And just the loss of efficiency and just the overburdening of staff, it really can eat at people. So that's really why we focus so much on our retention. Porter, is there anything I'm missing?
Yeah, if you want to just do some quick, we got some quick things on just kind of like more process stuff like payroll, and then, you know, making sure that you are planning your cash flow to keep your staff on through the slow season.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we were kind of working, we were basically paying our staff cash for a while and just keeping records and dealing with all that. But it's just to the point now where we have so many people and there's so much money coming in and out that we're just turning that over to payroll. Depending on your scale, payroll may not be worth it. I mean, we've handled quite a few people and a pretty hefty payroll budget with cash and just our own personal record keeping. But you know, if you're smaller or you don't want to deal with payroll, you can still do it with cash or 1099 or however you want to do it. But we are shifting into payroll, especially considering the Paycheck Protection Program funds and all that kind of stuff that's out there right now for being able to prove what you're spending. And then as far as like planning, you know, maintaining a year-round team definitely requires planning and saving. We have a policy in our earnings that we put back a percentage of our weekly sales in anticipation for the slow season. It's easy to get caught up when it's rolling in May, June, July, but we always try to save and set back even harder in those months. You know, so when winter hits and sales just naturally drop a little bit and the plants slow down a little bit and the bodies slow down a little bit, at least at that point we're looking at our payroll already in savings. Like, we know that if we lose somebody, it's not because we couldn't pay them. They just decided to take a different opportunity or move on. And again, like, even if we have to cut hours back a little bit for some of the folks, our goal is to keep everybody through the winter as a way of good faith and investing. And really, as most of y'all know, the winter, the cells may slow down and the plants may slow down, but the planning and the planting and those, like, that stuff doesn't slow down. There's still always projects and things to be done. So if you're creative and use that winter time to think about, okay, well, how can I use this time to like enhance infrastructure, or how can I use this time to really evaluate how to enhance our space and make our business grow? There's always going to be work. There's always going to be tasks that you can create to make your business better. And just strategically saving throughout the season is a really key piece to being able to know that your payroll budget is secure. And then, you know, again, it's back to that communication piece of always checking in, talking with our staff, encourage them to come to us with ideas, needs, and concerns. We always want to listen and then take action, because it's important to us that our staff knows we value their input, and more importantly, we value them as people and individuals.
Sorry, my dog is crying at another dog outside. But yeah, are there any questions about this section, or we're kind of wrapping up now? So questions for Paul in general, or about employee management, or any of the communication strategies or workflow strategies or anything?
I've got two quick questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have formal breaks during the day for your employees? And the second question is, what percentage of revenue is your labor?
I don't do formal breaks, especially it's kind of back to what Ellen was speaking on a little bit, like in the summer, because like when the heat's cranking up, it's hard for me to know what somebody needs. You know, if somebody processes their water and hydration differently, or they need, you know, they'd rather take a 5-minute break every hour as opposed to one 30-minute break every 3 hours or something. I'm pretty flexible with that. And then I just kind of delegate that oversight to the farm managers to just be like, hey, like, I don't care if people need to catch their breath or if they need to go smoke or whatever, but just make sure that we have an understanding of, that's part of that respect piece of like, I'm going to respect you and not micromanage your life. So don't take advantage of me and my flexibility within that. And if you do, that's a pretty quick way to the shit list. And then as far as percentage of, in our budget this coming year, we've probably got about 35% of revenue, 35% of revenue dedicated to payroll.
From my experience, 35% is perfect. That's the benchmark for a successful mixed vegetable operation is 35% paid labor.
You got the Ellen stamp of approval.
Man.
Go, Paul.
I'm good. I'm good for the day now.
Yay.
Does that include your salary, Paul?
No, that is not. We take the owner's salary out of the remaining 65.
Ellen's taking her stamp back.
No, that's
I'm
perfect.
kidding.
The benchmark for including all labor, including yourselves, could be around 45 to 50%. This is in a vegetable operation, not a livestock operation. It's a high labor game.
Yeah, I think like our general goal, I don't know, Ellen, you could expand on this a little bit, but it's like if I can keep my payroll and operating expenses at around 55%, then we're good.
I don't think about it that way, so I'd have to.
Yeah.
I can't speak off the top of my head. That sounds good.
Yeah, I've just been doing books for like the past 3 days, so my brain is just like in that world, and that's just kind of like, well, if I can be there, then I think we're in a good spot.
Paul, obviously you do training with your employees for like daily farm tasks, but do you do trainings with them for like understanding the business of the farm or like crop rotation planning and more of that kind of professional development, quote unquote?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I try to teach that through the processes of like, okay, this is what's going here, or we're going to put this cover crop here because this is what's going to come behind it, and that's what's going to help feed it. But yeah, I'm always open. That's one of my favorite parts is running the business and the numbers and making it all work. And for people, especially that show interest in wanting to farm and wanting to own their own farm one day, I'm always encouraging them to ask questions and pick my brain on that, because there's just so much more to it than being able to grow beautiful food, unfortunately.
I have a question about kind of your day-to-day workflow. You said that, the whiteboard, everyone comes in, the farm managers divvy up the tasks. You have your notes of like things that you're out of, things that you need, notes, whatever. Like, when do you like interact with that? Do you go and like set the whiteboard up for the week and then go check it daily to see if there's anything you need to order or if there's any big changes, or like what's the workflow around the whiteboard and like assigning tasks?
Usually like the farm managers get here at like 7:30, the crew gets here at 8. I get back from taking my kids to school at 9. And so I usually around like 9:15 go out and just kind of check in on everybody, make sure that we're going to be able to hit all of our harvest numbers, see if there's any big surpluses of things that are ready that need to come out of the field right then, and then kind of start working on sales outlets for where that stuff can go. I'll then check the board for, is there anything that we need? Is there anything that they need from me? So that's something I'm checking daily. And then my day is usually just spent like in project world of like, okay, well, this irrigation thing has to be dug out and fixed, and this, like, it's like Mark, my business partner, and I, we're kind of in tractor and project world all the time, it seems, as opposed to day to day. It's like, we're like, okay, we need to go plow this acre and get this field ready and get 100 beds wrapped up so that we can get that crop into there. And so he and I kind of function in the land prep and project design world, while the crew is more operating in the day-to-day harvest, plant, seed kind of situation.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's
Mhm.
helpful.
Hey, Paul.
Yes.
So I have 2 questions. Do you often have folks working by themselves, and is there a reason in your choice? And then also curious for you, but also everyone else, thoughts about the type of worker someone is. Does that dictate the quality of the work you expect? So that being said, like volunteers versus paid labor versus seasonal labor, the subtext for me is that sometimes I feel like I can't be as hard or have the same expectations on volunteer labor as paid labor. So I just wanted to, because everyone has different systems, like if anybody has opinions on that, but we don't have to open it up like that either. I was just curious.
I think that the task stuff, it's another thing that's kind of fluid. Like, if we've just got to get 20 bunches of kale, it's just like one person will just go out and knock that out while somebody else is knocking out turnips or radishes or whatever. But when we get into like larger, big orders, when I know it's going to be quite a task, I like to put people in teams. But then I have some people that just like to put their podcast in and work by themselves. And, I just try to be really flexible and read the situation and just kind of let my intuition kind of dictate what needs to be done. But then as far as like in strawberry season, we'll hire probably 2 people to 3 people, and that's all they're going to do is pick strawberries 3 days a week, as far as seasonal labor goes. And that expectation is the same as anybody else. They're going to be trained in that task and that if they're not that, there might be a little buffer as far as like the learning curve, but ultimately the expectation and the product and the people receiving the product expect the same quality no matter who is harvesting or preparing it. So there's a standard of expectation there. Volunteers are tricky because, you have some folks that show up just excited to see food grown and they've never seen it before and they're willing to go after it. And then some folks get here and don't realize how difficult it is. But I usually try not to be too hard on them, but I will not put like a volunteer on a task by themselves. I'll always put a trusted person with a volunteer because I just can't have them screwing stuff up.
I had a comment about volunteers. So for our volunteer days, I usually make these note cards and I clearly lay out the tasks. So it's like, we have a volunteer day coming up. And one of the things that we need to get done are potato cages. So I went out there last weekend and I set up all the cages. I pulled the straw out. I just laid everything individually so they had it already there. When they get there, their cards are numbered. They have each task listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of what you do. Step 1, lay the straw. Step 2, throw in the compost. Step 3, throw the seed potatoes in there. And then they have somebody who's volunteered before partner with that group. So that's how we normally do it.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and I think that definitely gets back to this point of like clear communication, clear expectations, and making sure things are laid out both verbally and in written form and shown, like you said, with the more experienced volunteers, to make sure things are done. You can cover all your bases with that. It's a good idea. I'll take that for my own volunteer work days. Cool. Well, it seems like kind of wrapping up now. Does anybody have any remaining lingering questions? I think I have one question left, is that, I think the feedback loop between manager and staff member is really important. Like, just the feedback loop of like, how can you improve as a person and how can the system itself improve? I think there are, just because of like our kind of like management culture, there are folks that are nervous to provide that feedback. They don't want to like, put themselves out there to do that. So like, how do you go about building a relationship where that person feels comfortable coming to you and saying like, hey, I think, this thing could be done better this way, or I think, whatever it is. Like, how do you create an environment where they're comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I see what you're saying and how that can be tough, but it's like I've never even thought of it. I've never even thought about it like that, and because I just have always, I think it comes from that piece of empowerment of like that's something that we try to preach into everyone is like, hey, like do you like take this task and own it and like make it yours. And I think when folks feel that energy of empowerment and acceptance of whoever, like I don't care who you are, if you're willing to work hard, like you're accepted and you're loved here. And we tell people like you are, like if you are here working for us, you're a part of our family. Like my house is on the farm. My 3 kids are here all the time. They know every staff member by name. Like you're a part of this. And I think by giving that energy and that feedback from day one to people, I think it just builds a comfort level of like, yeah, I'm your boss. Yeah, we sign your check, but I care about you. Like, and I hear you. And I think it's all those little things too that add up to that, Porter, of like those little validations and those, a birthday card or the cocktail at the fire or the potluck. It's all these little things together that build a culture of inclusivity and acceptance and openness. And I ask for feedback too. It's like, I think that makes people feel safe when I'm like, hey guys, we're gonna have a staff meeting next week. I want you to spend the next 3 or 4 days thinking about ways we can make this business better. And I'm not going to hold it against anybody. It is an open discussion. And I want each person to give me something to where we can improve. So I think it's a culture thing. And that it starts with me. It comes from the top down. And I think that's a thing as an owner, you have to take ownership of, is creating a culture where people feel accepted and open and free to express themselves.
Yeah, I wanted to say this real quick. I was just thinking about that when Paul was talking. I think that it seems like there's multiple moments throughout the week when the farm owner can lose their cool. I mean, there's so many moments when we can just lose it and get upset and start cursing or, be upset with an employee. And every time we choose not to do that and to handle the situation in a calm and collective and encouraging way, then I think that builds that relationship with the employee. Those little moments of handling situations in a real easygoing way.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I've found also, Chris, is like if something goes wrong or whatever, like I can want to blow up, but if I like step away and think about it, probably my fault because I didn't I didn't teach it well enough. Like I try to find a way to find how that was my responsibility for that not to happen that way. And it doesn't happen that way all the time, but like you're saying, instead of instantly reacting, you accept it, you step away and process what's going on, like, and then coming back and handling that in like a more loving and like building way as opposed to a breaking down way. Those are definitely good builders of trust and respect.
Yeah, I'm going to file that away, Chris, mentally, like calm, collected, encouraging way to handle bumps in the road. I love that.
Can I throw in a couple things?
Please.
Do you mind? I just want to appreciate, Paul, the beauty of your presentation and how authentic you're being and the words that you're saying. I just think it's, man, I'm moved by what you're saying. And what I want to bring to the group is something that I'm learning about in a class that I'm taking, that's distinguishing between what you do and who you are, about doing different than being. And what you're exemplifying in front of us is that you're being all of those words: accepting, open, flexible, loving. It's in your spirit, it's in your attitude, it's in your body language, it's in your mouth, it's in your eyes. You are being that, and you're doing things. And you have this amazing package now of exactly as you said, you've created a place people want to be there. And I just, man, hats off to you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Yeah, thanks for your feedback, Aubrey. Absolutely. Yeah, taking feedback seriously and implementing employee suggestions empowers them and builds relationship. Absolutely. Yeah, it's important for it to not be like, yeah, we would love your feedback and then just ignore anything they say. It's really important to take the next step, like you said, Paul, and actually implement what they say. Absolutely.
Yeah, I really appreciate all of y'all's positive feedback. I really enjoy doing these things and talking about farming and managing and growing businesses. It's a passion of mine. So it's nice to be in a virtual room of people who are also here for the same reasons.